reusing the old quarry tiles to frame the kitchen floor. So if I'd had enough bricks, I could have done a frame in brick, but because we're going to be short by about a metre or so, metre and a half, it's useful that we can reuse the old tiles that were accompanying the bricks up in the loft. There's around about 4 square metres of those. They're around about 15 centimetres by 15 centimetres, 6 inch by 6 inch, or a tiny bit smaller than that. And again, like the bricks, they're not engineered, so they're not all exact sized. They do vary quite a bit, as do the bricks. Hence, you get a few gaps in that within the brick paving. Right, so making a start, I've decided on the larger sections of the floor, I'll do 2 rows of tile, and then as we get down nearer to where the downstairs loo is going to be, it'd be a question of just using one, because it's going to be just too narrow, because where you've got the partition of the downstairs loo, and then you've got the units that are going to be going in, it'd just be too much if we use 2 layers of tile. And it's a basic sand and cement mix I'm using. I use MAP for the bricks, but the tiles aren't as big as, they're not as thick as the bricks, so they need quite a bit bigger bed. And I felt it would probably be easier, rather than knocking up the mortar adhesive all the time, just to go back to the old sand and cement stuff. There's a little bit of cement left on site, and we got some bags of sand, so utilising that. And with that, then that gives us a nice border, a nice framework for the flooring. And then it'll just be a question of, after that, sealing filling the joints with something or other. I haven't decided what I'm using yet. And then sealing the area, and there's a wee bit of cleaning to do on the bricks. As you'll see later, some of the bricks are painted sort of a pale green, and that's obviously going to need to get cleaned off to a degree, although it doesn't bother me too much. I don't tend to freak out about things like that. It's just part and parcel of the character of the bricks and the tiles. Some of the tiles are obviously missing bits of corner and slightly indented and all the rest of it. It's not, to me, it's not the end of the world. I'd sooner be looking at that than looking at the standard sort of tiled flooring, which was down before, which was a bit naff. And now the fashion seems to be grey tiles for floors in France, and I don't particularly like that either. So on this one, it's red brick and red tile. I'm calling them quarry tiles. I don't think they're really tonnettes. Tonnette to me is sort of a hexagonally shaped tile rather than a square like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the French will disagree and say that they're all tonnettes. But to me, a tonnette has the shape of when it's laid, it's like a honeycomb. And obviously, these are more like quarry tiles, we would say, in the UK. I don't know what the Americans call them, or the Australians. I'll use the term quarry tile. Fairly easy to bed in, just a tiny bit of a tap with a rubber mat from time to time. Does the job. And also today we had quite a big delivery or turn up, so I'll do a video of that later as well. So it was quite an action-packed day, getting back from Paris to the house, seeing how it's getting on. It's quite nice to be returning now, because you feel like you're not too far away from the end of the internals, although there's still 1,001 jobs to do. But it feels like it's getting there. And with the delivery, that's bringing in the other things, windows and stuff. So that's all helping to get the house more modernised as well in its own way. Right. So with this board, I might have made a minor error on the other side, in the fact that I haven't really allowed for. I can't remember what size the buffets are. It's like large pieces of French furniture, which I bought for no money at all, which is what I'm going to be doing the two main base units in. And I can't remember what size you are. I think they're pretty big, to be honest with you. Um, and so you will lose a bit on the other side, on the opposite side to where I'm working. You will lose the look of the frame, because it'll be hidden, I'd imagine, by a section of the buffet. But again, it's not the end of the world. The other thing is on the other side, to the left of where I'll be working. Where I'm working now is kind of the dining area bit, or will be, as it's quite a nice area that's separated from the two doors. And you've also got a window there as well on the outside. So this will be the dining area bit, and on the opposite side of that would then be like where the fridge freezer would be going and stuff. So you will lose. You won't see once the floor's finished, once furniture starts being put in and white appliances and all the rest of it. You're not going to see. You're going to lose sections of the floor. The main central bit obviously will remain, which is the brick herringbone. So that's quite nice. And then the edges vary quite a bit as well, because the walls aren't square. So there'll be a bit of making good, a bit of mortar work just to close up. And also the bottom area there where I'm working, the section of render beneath the timber beam really wants to be redone. It's all a bit naff, a bit untidy. It was in sort of several sections, and it's the same on the other side to the right hand side of where I'm working. So the chunks of flint and that, you can see that it'd be as well to put like a render coat of probably lime and sand over those areas, just to tidy them up a wee bit, and then we can be painted or left or whatever. So that'll resolve another issue. Yeah, so the door opens and shuts now. It just needs weatherboarding on it. The kitchen door needs 3 panes of glass to replace the ones that were broken at some stage, and it needs to have some sort of secondary double glazing put on it. Otherwise, we'll get clobbered by the energy rating. There's a thing called the DPE that all houses get now, and you ideally want to be as close to A as possible. A's for this kind of house is impossible to achieve, really, unless you sort of knocked it down and rebuilt it from scratch. But if we can get to something like a C, I'll be very, very happy. And I was reading an article on someone that had spent an absolute fortune on insulation, UPVC, and all the rest of it, and he still only ended up with a D, believe it or not. So it runs from A to G. G obviously being the absolute worst, A being the top dog. And he was highly disappointed, having spent tens of thousands on insulating and modernising his house, to end up with a rating of D. So we'll wait and see where we get to with our one. What else to say on this? It's a relatively slow process as such. I mean, it took me a good day to lay the tiles in place, or lay the bricks in place rather, and then you've got a few hours worth of cutting, because obviously I've done it at 45-degree angle, which means that there's lots of cuts going in, but it does look, it looks better. Just looked at a neighbour in actually today, and he was like, "Oh wow, the floor's fabulous. What a great use of the old bricks," he was saying. So I was kind of pleased about that. So yeah, it's a bit time consuming, but ideally you only do it once. So when it's done, isn't it? And it's done for certainly my lifetime, maybe my kids' lifetimes. And then somebody will no doubt come in at some stage and put some linoleum over it, or rip it up and put grey tiles down. So such is life. Cracking on with this. You see, there's a bit of stuff there just what's knocking away from the render. It's getting in the way of the tile. It's nice to see this done, because I'm going to have to put some sort of staging in to get me up to make good the walls that are above the sort of the kitchen now. It's quite high. It starts at about 2 meters and runs up to nearly 4 meters. So I haven't got a towering in, so I'll have to rig up some sort of trestle as I've done before, and that'll enable me to get the insulation and the everything else on the ceiling that needs to be done, which will be quite nice. Again, brings the whole job forward again and makes it a bit more toasty. Once the insulation's in, there'll be 8 inches of insulation, 200 millimeters across the vaulted ceiling, and then up into the tiny bit of flat ceiling that you'll have at the end, and that'll have 200 mil in it as well. So it should. I'm hoping that all these things will really benefit the holding of the heat within the house. The wood burner I'm going to be getting is probably only going to need to be about 7 kilowatt maximum. I should imagine that'd be more than enough because it's a fairly open plan style house. That should push the heat around quite nice. It should be sufficient. And then obviously once the rooms are warm, hopefully they'll hold that heat for a considerable amount of time. Alright, so working on the other side of the border now. Again, this is still in what will be sort of a little dining area. And this is still 2 tiles wide, and it continues around 2 tiles wide just up to where the back door is, and then it reduces down to 1, and then it increases again back to 2, and then when we get to the thinner section of flooring, which is actually where the units are going to be and where the downstairs loo is, then I'll revert back to just 1 tile as an edge, and that should suffice. There's another thing I would like to ask you to do, if you would, is leave a comment. It doesn't need to be complimentary or anything else, but apparently it just really helps the algorithm. So the more people that leave a comment, even if you just say good, bad, horrible, brilliant, whatever, half a sentence or 1 sentence or a couple of words, it should really, really help. I've got, obviously there's quite a few people that do comments on a regular basis, and that's terrific. But I know there's a lot of people that watch these that haven't given any commenting, haven't commented at all on the video. So if perhaps you just could take sort of 30 seconds out of your day while you're watching this, just to quickly write something down and just add it to the comments, then that hopefully will help to push the channel along a wee bit, because the numbers go up and down. And obviously it would be nice to sort of grow the channel a wee bit more. The idea behind this was to try and show people that really anybody can kind of renovate a house from scratch. You don't have to be an expert in any way. You don't have to be, or I have worked in the building industry all my working life. But it's not that's driving me on here. There are other factors. And it's these days, the cost of housing and everything else, if you can pick up an older house and much cheaper, and you can put your own stamp on it. And it was just an idea of if I can show certain techniques on how things can be done, or give certain ideas of what could be done for floors, for walls, etc. Doing petitions, making plasterboard petitions and things like that. Putting in, smallish showrooms into fairly compact areas, converting lofts into usable spaces. That was the idea behind this. So obviously, if we can grow the channel a wee bit more, get the message out a little bit more to people, hopefully everybody will sort of benefit from that. So thank you. If you're to just do a very quick comment for me. And like I say, it doesn't matter. You could say, "Oh, it's a lot of rubbish what you're doing." That doesn't really matter. The algorithm will just pick up that people are commenting, and if it sees people commenting, it will offer the videos to other people. So it sort of broadens hopefully the audience that might get to see it. Not that it's massively super interesting, but like I say, somebody might be able to take a bit of advice, a bit of help and encouragement from what I'm doing. Like I say, I'm an old boy now, still cracking on, trying to get there. Hopefully this will be my final house renovation. I'll have the barns to do, the garage afterwards. I've got 3 of those to renovate in some fashion. We'll make one into a studio, one will be a garage, and one will be a workshop. And again, with the workshop, I would like to be offering that people could perhaps come and have a go at various bits and pieces if it sort of tickles your fancy, or if you want to learn how to do a bit of plumbing or a little bit of electrical work, that sort of basic stuff, or if you just fancy having a go at tiling, roof tiling, floor tiling, ceiling tiling, wall tiling, anything like that, changing kitchen taps, anything like that. I just think it'd be quite useful, be quite a nice environment to work in. It's a nice part of the world. There's other things to do as well if you come here. It's a lovely part of the world to visit. Not too far from Paris, fairly easy to get to. And you've got some fantastic countryside around here with lots of lakes, chateaux, and stuff. There's a multitude of chateaux within it's almost spitting distance of where this house is. So anyway, that's another idea for you of where I'm at. And then obviously the studio would be useful if I can rent the place out to get a bit of income that way as well, and I can use the studio when I'm there. And it's more than a big enough space for me. It's quite a size. That third barn is quite a size anyway. So just the amount of work that needs sorting out first of all. So we're at the stage where this was not entirely finished, but it had sort of gone a fair way through, and I thought I'd just take a quick bit of footage. This was, I think, not long after I just offloaded the delivery. So you can see with 2 tiles still there. And then this is the final section where you can see it runs down to 1 tile, just going around the right hand side there. That's going to be the downstairs loo, and then the other concrete bits you won't see because they will be covered with the kitchen units, which will be the French buffets. So it should look super duper. And like I say, I'm not over it. It doesn't freak me out too much, the fact that some of the bricks have got green paint on them. It just adds to the character really of the floor. What do you think? There you go. You could comment on that. Do you like the bits of green, or do you think it's horrible? Does it definitely need cleaning up, or can it stay as is? There you go. A few ideas for you. Anyway, getting to the end of this video as ever. Thanks ever so much if you've managed to get all the way to the end and listen to my ramblings. Thanks ever so much for all those people that have recently bought me a coffee. It's very, very kind of you, and I shall see you very soon on the next video.